Lucy Brown had never imagined her life would unfold in such a strange way. In a world staged like a school romance novel, she was nothing more than a background character, just a name on the class roster, a passing face in the hallway, a shrill voice screaming whenever the male leads walked by. But unlike other nameless extras, Lucy had been given a special task: to become the loyal, passionate, and perhaps a little over-the-top fangirl of the school's four most dazzling male leads: Antonio Adams, Baldwin Britton, Caesar Cameron, and Donald Dayton. The job might sound ridiculous, but for Lucy, it was her livelihood. Whenever Antonio appeared, she had to scream, drop her books, or even pretend to faint for dramatic effect. When Baldwin strolled down the hall, Lucy clutched her chest, gasped for breath, or rushed forward to beg for his autograph. With Caesar, the flirtatious playboy, she played the role of dreamy admirer, her eyes sparkling as though she were lost in romance. And Donald, the gentle childhood friend, demanded a different act. Lucy became the quiet admirer, secretly watching him from afar, sneaking photos like a lovesick fan. The amusing part was that every one of these performances came with proper compensation. After each fangirl act, Lucy received a generous sum of money. It was more than enough to cover her living expenses, even enough to let her live comfortably without worrying about the future. Yet sometimes Lucy wondered, was she really doing this for the money, or was there another reason hidden beneath it all? There were moments, standing under the blazing sun and screaming at the top of her lungs, or collapsing dramatically in the middle of a crowded courtyard, when Lucy felt like an actress trapped in a play that would never end. She knew perfectly well her role was only to serve as a backdrop, to enhance the brilliance of the four male leads, and to provide the stepping stone for the heroine, Susanna, to shine. And yet, somewhere deep inside, Lucy couldn't help but think, if I didn't scream, if I didn't faint, would anyone really notice them the same way? Perhaps my own obscurity is what makes their brilliance stand out. Because of that, Lucy felt both insecure and amused by her position. She wasn't allowed to truly fall in love, nor to take the spotlight, nor to break the script. Her job was to chase, to cheer, to decorate the stage, a dazzling shadow no one could truly see. And still, Lucy Brown gave it her all. Because at the very least, while everyone else merely existed within the story, she had a clear purpose: to be a professional fangirl, and to survive by embracing her role. Being a fangirl was more than just screaming or fainting. For Lucy, it was practically a profession, one that required skill, preparation, and the ability to transform her appearance at will. Each day at school, she was like an actress stepping onto a film set. One day she might be the dreamy girl with flowing long hair, dressed in white and carrying books, ready to cross paths with Baldwin in the hallway. The next day she might reinvent herself as a bold, fiery fan in shorts and bright red lipstick, shouting from the bleachers as Caesar entered the basketball court. She even kept an entire identity collection to rotate through, avoiding suspicion and preventing anyone from noticing repetition. Each persona was crafted with care: hairstyle, nail color, accessories, even the way she smiled or walked. To outsiders, Lucy was just another one of hundreds of girls swooning over the four boys, but only she knew it was all part of a carefully organized plan. And the most remarkable thing? Each successful performance earned her $5,000, an amount even fresh college graduates would struggle to make in such a short time. At first, Lucy was surprised, but then she gradually got used to it. Every time Antonio walked past with his cold, handsome face, she pretended to tremble with excitement. Whenever Caesar winked, Lucy screamed as if she had just witnessed the greatest moment of her life. Her exaggerated reaction stirred up the crowd, creating exactly the atmosphere the story required. And right after that, Lucy would quietly receive her payment, precise, exact, not a penny more, not a penny less. Sometimes, Lucy couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of her profession. While others had to burn themselves out with tutoring or part-time jobs just to earn a little, all she needed to do was scream, faint, or pretend to be dazzled by someone's gaze. Still, she knew this couldn't last forever. No matter how tempting the money was, living under countless fangirl disguises, day after day, was wearing her down. That was why she always reminded herself, I just need to endure until the end of this semester. After that, I'll quit. I won't have to put on costumes, won't have to scream, won't have to chase anyone anymore. I'll get to live as myself. That thought was like a lifeline, something for Lucy to cling to as she continued to play her part, and yet, a small part of her heart quietly wondered, if one day she truly abandoned the role of fangirl, would anyone notice her absence? Or would everything continue on as though Lucy Brown had never existed? Antonio Adams, the brilliant scholar Antonio, had long been famous at school as the prince of academics. Tall, handsome, and always exuding a cool, distant composure, he was the dream of countless girls. One morning, Lucy prepared a new role for herself, the gentle, caring admirer. She carried a carefully wrapped breakfast box, summoned her courage, and approached Antonio's desk. Leaning forward sweetly, she said, Antonio, I prepared breakfast for you. The entire class turned to watch. But Antonio merely raised his brows, his cold gaze cutting like a blade, and replied curtly, I don't accept food from strangers. What unsettled Lucy most was that Susanna, the heroine, was sitting nearby. Antonio immediately turned to her with a warm smile, completely ignoring Lucy. Her mission was complete, to create a sharp contrast that made Antonio's affectionate glance at Susanna stand out even more. Lucy forced a smile and stepped back, a faint ache tugging at her chest, but she quickly reminded herself, this was just another role. Baldwin Britton, the gentleman aristocrat. Unlike Antonio's cold demeanor, Baldwin carried himself like the epitome of a refined young aristocrat. He was always immaculate, polite, and so proper that he felt almost untouchable. This time, Lucy's task was to confess to him, not a real confession, but a staged one through a clumsy love letter. She wrote delicate lines by hand, tucked in a few dried flowers, and timed it perfectly to hand it to Baldwin as he passed through the schoolyard. In front of a crowd of eager girls watching with bated breath, Baldwin glanced at the letter, then promptly returned it, his voice firm and final, sorry, I don't accept. No hesitation, no smile, not even a sliver of hope. The crowd buzzed, a few snickers breaking out. Lucy feigned watery eyes, trembling with heartbreak as she ran out of the courtyard. The scene only made Baldwin seem more stern, more unattainable. And when Susanna appeared shortly afterward, the rare gentle look Baldwin gave her became all the more precious. Lucy knew she had just played her role perfectly, the failed confessor, the essential stepping stone that highlighted Baldwin's true feelings for the heroine. Caesar Cameron, the charming playboy among the four, Caesar was the most unpredictable. He was famous for his flirtatious charm, always knowing how to capture attention with his roguish smile. Lucy's task this time was bolder. She had to transform into a seductive girl at the school dance. Her hair fell in soft waves, her figure accentuated by a crimson dress, her lips painted a deep, daring red. Lucy was no longer the shy, squealing fangirl. Under the dim glow of the lights, she approached Caesar and asked him for a dance. He smirked, not refusing, and slipped his arm around her waist, spinning her across the floor. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath, watching Caesar and this mysterious, alluring girl move together in near-perfect harmony. But the magic was short-lived. After only a few turns, Caesar's eyes caught sight of Susanna standing in the corner. Without hesitation, he released Lucy, not even bothering with a word, and casually strolled over to the heroine. Lucy stood frozen, forcing a stiff smile, whispering to herself, my role ends here. Donald Dayton, the childhood friend of Antonio, was cold, Baldwin was serious, and Caesar was a playboy. Then Donald embodied the image of the boy next door, warm, approachable, and kind. For Donald, Lucy's assignment was more subtle. She had to play the part of the quiet admirer, secretly following him, snapping photos from afar, then planting rumors on the school forum. One afternoon, Lucy pretended to sit beneath a tree, hiding a small camera behind a book. She quietly clicked the shutter as Donald laughed with Susanna. Those photos later spread quickly, fueling whispers of jealousy and tiny misunderstandings, just enough to give Donald and Susanna moments alone, opportunities to explain, to connect. Lucy understood her place, the silent fangirl whose feelings would never be returned, yet whose presence pushed the main couple closer together. Every scene, every role Lucy played was scripted with precision, and she carried them out flawlessly. But the more she acted, the clearer the distance became, not just written into the script, but etched into reality itself. They belonged to the spotlight, while she remained a shadow lingering outside the frame. If the screaming, fainting, and failed confessions were only the surface of her work, then the real labor took place behind the scenes. When Lucy wasn't putting on the mask of a fangirl in the schoolyard, she sat for hours in front of her laptop, quietly managing the student forum. On the surface, it looked like a casual gossip board, but in truth, it was one of her most powerful tools for steering the story. Every post, every picture she uploaded was carefully calculated. A candid shot of Susanna smiling at Antonio could be captioned, "The mysterious girl who makes the top scholars soften." A snapshot of Baldwin beside Susanna in the library could be spun into gossip, the study duo everyone envies. The chatter from other students in the comments only served as background noise, perfectly amplifying the script Lucy had already drafted, and she didn't just spread rumors, sometimes she played the antagonist herself. She would deliberately linger too close to Caesar, laughing a little too warmly, just to plant doubt in Susanna's mind. Or she would send an anonymous letter hinting that Donald had another admirer. These little sparks of conflict often led to tension, but that was exactly the point. Only through misunderstandings and reconciliations could the main relationships truly grow. At times, Lucy felt like the director of an enormous stage play. She set the scenes, orchestrated the plot, and even wrote the dialogue by manipulating the flow of gossip. She was, all at once, the screenwriter, the actress, and the audience. All of it done to ensure that Susanna's entanglements with the four male leads always moved forward, just as the story demanded. But because of that very role, Lucy grew more and more exhausted. Each night, as the glow of her laptop screen lingered, she would rest her chin on her hand and wonder, if I stop, will everything continue? Or will it all end right here? And yet, she couldn't bring herself to quit. She was like an invisible link, a small but crucial cog keeping the machine of love turning smoothly. Sometimes Lucy laughed at the phrase "a one-woman production team." It perfectly described her situation. All the tricks, the details, the side plots, every bit of it was orchestrated by her. No one knew, no one gave her credit, but without Lucy, the story would lose much of its color. So, day after day, she continued her silent work, even as a growing yearning gnawed at her heart, just once, only once, to live without a script. As time passed, the repeated roles wore her down. Each time she had to fake fainting in the middle of the schoolyard, she felt more like an awkward puppet. The screams, the staged gossip on the forum, none of it thrilled her anymore. Where once there had been the adrenaline of participating in a secret play, now there was only weariness. Lucy realized she no longer wanted to insert herself into the romantic scenes of Susanna and the four male leads. Each time she saw them smile at one another, she asked herself, do I really need to stand here, just as their backdrop? The answer grew clearer with every passing day. No. One morning, instead of putting on her modified uniform to play the part of a fangirl, Lucy slipped into a simple t-shirt and worn jeans. She stepped outside with a bare face, free of makeup. She no longer cared about anyone's gaze, no longer worried about playing a role. She even abandoned the student forum, letting the rumors fade away on their own. For the first time in months, Lucy felt free. Those days were wonderfully light. She ate breakfast leisurely at a small café near her home, strolled through the park without pretending to accidentally run into anyone, read her favorite novels instead of burying herself in someone else's script. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed the dark circles under her eyes had faded, her smile looked more natural. "This is me," she whispered. "Lucy Brown, a normal girl. Not a fangirl, not an antagonist, not someone's shadow." But the peace didn't last long. One weekend afternoon, as Lucy sat in her living room with a book, a knock sounded at the door. At first, she thought it was the delivery man. But when she opened it, she was met with four familiar faces: Antonio, Baldwin, Caesar, and Donald. They stood there, each with a different posture, yet all radiating an unusual seriousness. Antonio crossed his arms, his sharp gaze probing her. Baldwin straightened his collar, his expression stern. Caesar leaned casually against the doorframe, his trademark half-smile faltering with a trace of unease. And Donald, his eyes shone with unmistakable worry. "Lucy," Antonio spoke first, his voice low and firm. "Why have you disappeared lately?" "That's right," Baldwin added. "You no longer show up at school. You no longer do what you used to do." Caesar raised an eyebrow. "I have to admit, I feel a bit let down. You just vanished without a word." Donald's gaze lingered on her, his tone almost reproachful. "You once said you'd always be there, yet you walked away." Lucy froze. She had never imagined that the very people she thought would never notice her existence were now all standing before her. They, the four central figures of the story, had come to her door just to ask one thing: why had Lucy Brown disappeared? Her tiny apartment suddenly felt cramped as all four of them stepped inside. The atmosphere was heavy, and Lucy could feel her heart pounding faster than usual. She set her book down on the table and forced her voice to remain steady. "So, why are you here? I thought everything was going well for you." Antonio spoke first. Arms crossed, his sharp gaze carried something unusual, an edge of concern, or perhaps reproach. "You didn't need to vanish like that. If you're tired, you only need to choose one of us to follow. You don't have to carry us all." Lucy was stunned, unable to respond before Baldwin picked up the thread. His voice was low, steady, almost like he was offering a contract. "He's right. You don't have to run everywhere anymore. If you want, choose me. I'll handle everything for you so you don't have to exhaust yourself like this." Caesar gave a short laugh, but it lacked his usual charm and instead carried a hint of bitterness. "Isn't that a bit too dry? Lucy, come with me. I can give you moments of joy and freedom, more than any of them ever could." The tension thickened when Donald suddenly pulled out a stack of bank cards and placed them firmly on the table in front of Lucy. "You don't need to hesitate anymore. I'll pay double, triple what you used to get. As long as you agree to stay and choose me, you'll never have to worry about money again." Lucy looked at the four of them, a surge of indescribable frustration rising inside her. For months, she had played the role of the fangirl, caught in a script she hadn't written, thinking it was the only way to exist. Yet now, they were reducing her choice to a mere negotiation, as if emotions could be bought and sold. She drew a deep breath, then slowly stood up. Her voice rang clear, steadier, and more resolute than ever. "You're all mistaken. I never wanted to choose any of you. I don't want to be a satellite orbiting around you anymore. From now on, I'll live for myself." The room fell into a dead silence. Antonio's brow furrowed, Baldwin's fists clenched, Caesar stopped smiling, and Donald stared at her as though he couldn't believe his ears. They, men who had always been admired and adored, were, for the very first time, confronted with an uncompromising rejection from a so-called background character. Lucy stepped to the door and flung it open. Light from outside poured in, illuminating her face. "This story may go on," she said softly, "but I am no longer a part of it. I choose freedom." Without waiting for a response, Lucy turned away. Her heart trembled yet felt strangely light. For the first time, she truly stepped out from the shadow of the script and into a story that belonged solely to her. As the cicadas buzzed, heralding the arrival of summer, the atmosphere at school began to shift. The bulletin boards that had once overflowed with rumors, the eager eyes that had followed Susanna and the four male leads at every turn, now grew quiet. News of Susanna's transfer spread within a single day, like a sudden breeze sweeping away the usual commotion. Antonio, Baldwin, Caesar, and Donald no longer stood together at the female lead's side. They each slipped back into their ordinary routines. Antonio buried himself in the lab, Baldwin devoted more time to the student council, Caesar still attended parties but with less extravagance, and Donald returned to being the approachable friend everyone admired. The school, once a stage for endless drama, suddenly became an ordinary place, its calm almost unbelievable. From a distance, Lucy watched it all, as if she were seeing the final scenes of a film. For so long, she had been the hidden director, the one who fueled rumors and wove together moments to keep the love pentagon thrilling. Now, with the curtain drawn, everything felt lighter. As though a great weight had been set down, she began to return to her true self. No more layers of makeup, no more role as the screaming fangirl, no more forced scripts binding her to Susanna's every move. Lucy came to class with her hair tied neatly back, her eyes bare of eyeliner, carrying nothing but a small notebook. Her classmates gradually noticed a different Lucy, quieter but genuine, no longer chasing anyone's spotlight but living at her own pace. Sometimes, Lucy still caught the glances of the male leads. They no longer held arrogance or detachment, but rather an acknowledgement of her independent presence, not a fangirl, not a satellite, just Lucy Brown. At the semester's closing ceremony, Lucy sat in the back row, listening as the principal spoke of the maturity and freedom of each student's choices. The words made her smile. Yes, she wasn't the center of any love story, nor the brightest character on stage. But she had learned the most important lesson: in her own life, she had the right to be the center. When the final bell rang, students poured out through the school gates. Lucy walked with the crowd, the golden afternoon sunlight spilling across her shoulders, glowing like a new beginning. Lucy Brown, she whispered to herself, will no longer be a side character in anyone else's story. And so the tale closed, not with a dramatic confession or a romantic finale, but with a quiet, powerful choice, to live for herself. One late afternoon, when Lucy stopped by an internet cafe near the dorms to kill some time, she unexpectedly spotted a familiar figure. On the large screen hanging in the shop, the nickname Adams99 was dominating the leaderboard of a popular strategy game. The player, seated in the far corner, tall and slender, was clicking the mouse at an astonishing speed. Lucy froze for a moment. Could that really be Antonio Adams, the school's cold, flawless top student? She was about to turn away, pretending not to notice. But just then, Antonio lifted his head and caught her gaze. To her surprise, instead of his usual distant expression, he smiled, a casual, even slightly awkward smile. Lucy? You play games too? Lucy blinked. The question sounded so ordinary, she couldn't react in time. Antonio didn't give her a chance to escape. He waved her over and pulled out the chair beside him. Sit down. Play around with me. In that moment, Lucy realized he was no longer the aloof male lead of the school's stage. Gone was the arrogance, gone was the untouchable composure. Right now, Antonio was just a young guy, excited to invite a friend to play a game together. At first, Lucy was a bit clumsy, but as they began teaming up in the game, the atmosphere turned surprisingly relaxed. Antonio laughed out loud whenever she made a mistake, then patiently showed her how to upgrade faster. Sometimes, he even muttered complaints. At school, everyone thinks I'm serious all the time. Honestly, I'm only serious about studying. Other than that, I'm hopelessly addicted to games. Lucy burst out laughing, feeling as though she was talking to an entirely different Antonio, not the flawless top student, not the pre-written protagonist, but a real person with hobbies, flaws, and his own little joys. When the final match ended, Antonio swiveled his chair, tilting his head toward her. You know, playing with you was a lot more fun than I expected. How about, we team up again next time? Lucy hesitated. Until now, every interaction between them had been dictated by the script of the love pentagon. But this moment was completely different. No Susanna, no school forum, no fangirl role. Just Antonio and Lucy, two ordinary people sharing a simple hobby. She nodded, smiling softly. All right. But next time, don't laugh at me so much. Antonio chuckled, his eyes lighting up, not cold, but warm, like the boy next door. And in that instant, Lucy realized, perhaps this was the exception. A bond that existed outside any script, but felt more genuine than all the rest.